Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone joining us online from overseas, welcome to the Global Youth Leaders Summit 2020. My name is YC, and I'm a graduate of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. It is my pleasure to be your MC today. In light of the current pandemic, it is the very first time for the Global Youth Leaders Summit to be held online this year. Today, with your support, we have gathered over 200 participants joining us here on different platforms, and we would like to thank you for your participation. At the same time, as you can see on your screen, we have connected over 100 talented young minds from 10 institutions worldwide today to review our roles in this critical time and to explore ways to transform crisis into reconnection. Now, let's wave to the camera and say hi to our audience today. Thank you very much. Through reflecting on our experiences under different pandemic settings and going through a series of online discussions at different stages, we hope all of you would be able to brainstorm ideas together and to transform them into social initiatives for the betterment of your community. Now, before we move on, may I invite Professor Jin Guangteng, President of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, to deliver the opening remarks. Professor Teng, please.
Dato Dr. Kim Tang, Ms. Jennifer Nielsen, Mr. Jeffrey Angelos, Professor Angie Yun, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, I wish you all well during this very difficult period, and I extend my warmest welcome to all of you to the Global Youth Leaders Summit 2020. I'm pleased that we have youth leaders of more than 10 universities from different parts of the world at this year's summit. The theme of this year's summit is Transforming Crisis into Reconnection. As we all know, the current COVID-19 crisis is massive, and what comes next is profoundly unclear. But as the Chinese saying goes, in every crisis there is an opportunity. We hope our young leaders will learn to become more resilient through this challenge and understand better how they should contribute in order to fulfill their social responsibility. PolyU has always been committed to fulfilling its social responsibility through educational and research endeavors. In particular, we place great emphasis on nurturing successful future professionals and leaders with a deep affection for their family and nation, an international perspective, and a strong sense of social responsibility. PolyU was the first university in Hong Kong to include service learning as one of the core and mandatory components of our undergraduate curriculum. Service learning integrates meaningful community service with academic study to enrich students' learning experience. It is part of PolyU's effort to provide our students with a rich and holistic educational experience. Indeed, service learning has a strong positive influence on students' personal and academic development. Since 2012, over 24,000 PolyU students have completed a service learning subject as a graduation requirement, and together they have spent almost 1 million hours serving people in need of help. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, our students could not travel to remote places outside Hong Kong this year, but this did not prevent them from serving others. In some cases, they leveraged online channels to reach people who were far away, and in doing so, demonstrated their perseverance and resilience. On our service learning programs, students have the opportunity to learn with inspiring young leaders from different parts of the world. Let me cite two examples from this year's summit that illustrate how service learning connects young people around the globe for a meaningful cause. The first one is the 24-hour Global Reconnection Hackathon. Students from different universities will brainstorm, design, and co-create innovative prototypes that address pressing world challenges. Another one is the Global Reflection Workshop, where students will share their studies on the challenges faced by specific groups, such as elderly people who live alone during the pandemic. I see the summit as providing an invaluable platform for all participants to learn from each other and to explore possibilities for deeper collaboration in service learning. Before I conclude my remarks, I would also like to thank all distinguished speakers, delegates, and students for your enthusiastic participation and strong support. I wish you all a successful and rewarding summit.
Thank you, Professor Teng. Today, we are very honored to have invited a number of remarkable guests to share with us in a panel discussion their experience in social betterment and how the coronavirus has impacted their work. During the discussion, please feel free to leave your questions in the chat box anytime and help us to complete a questionnaire on the top right-hand corner. Now, without further ado, may I pass the time to Professor Angelina Yun, Honorary Professor of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University and the moderator of the session. Professor Yun, please.
Hello. Welcome to this session. And I'm really delighted to be able to join this and to become the moderator of this session. Welcome to this Global Youth Leaders Summit 2020. And the topic is Transforming Crisis into Reconnection. And I really loved the name of this topic. And welcome students from all over the world, different corners of the world to join this session. And today, we are going to discuss on the issue of the new global landscape and how it affects us. All of us, I think all the students that are participating in this session have been involved in a lot of international service learning and international endeavors. And I think this pandemic has seriously affected our opportunity to interact with each other. And we cannot see each other, meet each other, and work together as in the past. So I think it has significantly influenced our interaction and our social relationship. But I think all of us, we are still committed to our global exchange and to our interaction and to social betterment through international collaboration. So today, we are going to discuss on this issue and how are we going to continue with our endeavor to serve the world through international collaboration despite the COVID-19. And today we are really delighted to have invited three very, very distinguished guests who have invested a lot of their time on social betterment in their respective spheres of influence. And they are going to share with us their experience and how do they interact and how do they serve people through this, throughout this pandemic. And today I would like to introduce three of them. The first one is Dr. Kim Tan, founder chairman of Spring Hill Management Limited and co-founder of the Transformational Business Network. The second speaker is Ms. Jennifer Nelson, national director at the Lesotho World Vision International until recently, and now she's the international director of COVID-19 of World Vision. And the third speaker is Mr. Jeffrey Andrews, who is the first registered ethnic minority social worker in Hong Kong serving refugees. And I think they have ample experience to share with us and to share with us especially how they deal with this COVID-19 and how do they continue to serve people despite COVID-19. So without much ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Kim Tan, who's the founder of the transformational, who's the, I have to read this because his CV is so long that I have to select those that are relevant to this one. Everyone is relevant, actually. So he's the founding chairman of Spring Hill Management Limited UK and co-founder of the Transformational Business Network UK. And he's also the founder of numerous venture capital investments serving people. So without much ado, can I introduce our Dr. Tan to speak to us on the topic? Yeah. And he's given 15 minutes to share his experience, and please also share your screen. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Professor Angeline. A pleasure to be with you all, and I hope you'll be able to see the slides that I want to use. For me, it's early morning. It's 6:30 in the morning here in the UK, so good afternoon to the rest of you. Are you able to see the screen? Okay, good. I've been really asked to address how our existing portfolio investments have coped with the COVID pandemic. And the broad answer is some have done very well, some have done reasonably well, and others have done very badly. And I want to give you examples from each one of them. Are you able to see the next slide? Okay, so I think in general, the areas where we've invested in businesses in the food, agriculture, food processing areas have done very, very well. Because I guess even in the pandemic, people still need to eat. So this is a business that we have in Ethiopia. We have about 250 farmers with about farming around 250 acres in what is called a permaculture kind of agriculture, where we have mixed farming, so it's organic. And the beauty about the permaculture is that because it's mixed farming, farmers are able to harvest something, some produce every week, and therefore that improves their cash flow. And despite the pandemic, we've been able to work with the Ethiopian Airlines, and we have a shipment into the UK and into the Netherlands every week. So that has gone consistently, and if anything, the pandemic has driven up the volume of produce. This is another example of food production. This is we have a honey business in northern Zambia. We have 90,000 beehives hanging in forest trees, working with 10,000 farmers. And if each farmer has about 20 to 30 beehives, it doubles their annual income. And bees don't care about pandemics, and they've been consistently producing. So we export about 300 tons of forest honey every year out of northern Zambia. But although the bees are not hampered because of border shutdowns, we've not been able to export. So even though we've been able to produce, because of logistics, we've not been able to do as well as we might. Green Hope is another business that we have in Indonesia. We work with several thousand cassava farmers, and from the cassava, we make biodegradable plastics. And you would have thought with the increase in PPE and so on, there'd be a need for these plastics. Unfortunately, again, because of transportation logistics, it's not been possible to do as much export as we would like. But this is nevertheless a very important product. in terms of the environment. So we continue to want to see more growth in this area. Toilets, we run about 3,500 toilets in the slums in Kenya, in Nairobi, where we now serve about 120,000 people every day. Pandemic or no, people still need to use access to toilets. The way we make this profitable is to take the waste away to convert into organic fertilizer, and as well as to use the waste to produce a protein, an insect protein from black soldier fly. And it's selling the protein and selling the fertilizer that makes this business sustainable. So this has been a good business in a pandemic. Another area that's done very well is in the IT kind of space. This is a business in the slum as well in Nairobi, where there's been a huge demand for data and for internet access. This business, we really can't cope with the pace of growth at the moment. Agape is a business in a telephone call center area. We employ 80 male prisoners inside Changi Prison in Singapore, the largest prison in Singapore, and another 100 women prisoners in the women's section. And we run a phone call and a contact center. And when the inmates are released, we rehire them in a call center outside. This is also done really, really well because, again, contact and trace and the counseling and the kind of hotline that is needed to sort of cope with during this pandemic time, that's been managed by a contract with the Agape. So we need to see growth here as well. What has been surprising for us is that we thought maybe the healthcare sector will do really well during this pandemic, and the answer, it hasn't done that well. And I think the reason is because, two reasons. One is because people are afraid to go to hospital during this time because they are afraid that they might contract the virus. The other reason here is this is a business that we have in Kenya, in the sort of center of Kenya, an area called Naivasha. We serve 50,000 flower farm workers. These are workers in a flower farm that produce flowers that exports into Europe. Almost 25% of all the roses in Europe come from this area. But because of pandemic, the farms were shut down, and therefore our footfall had gone down. But the one thing that has happened that has gone well is that the vegetable side of the farm business has gone really, really well. Again, the other problem we had was transportation. During this COVID time, the airlines put up the freight costs, sometimes threefold, fourfold, and it just makes it very expensive to transport these products. Same thing with our chain of clinics in Nairobi. We thought we would do well with this, but we haven't. The area that has done the worst has been in the hospitality and tourism sector. So this is our Safari Game Park down in South Africa, where we have 40,000 acres of degraded land that has been restored, and we've sort of fenced it, and we've been operational for the last 10 years. We've been profitable in the last 3 years. This year was going to be our best year yet, but because of the pandemic, international tourism has just dropped and ceased. And we've had here to lay off some workers and put others on a reduced pay because we just don't know how long this international shutdown is going to take. But in the meantime, what we have done is we've got 15 families on site, so they form a bubble where they're looked after, and then we've run a food bank for those workers, our staff who've been laid off. That's how we've tried to sort of manage things for them. Now, I thought that with pandemic, there will be a silver lining for nature and for conservation. And initially, we saw that. We saw lions roaming around. We saw penguins walking around Cape Town, and so on. But the reality is that when tourism stopped and our lodges shut down, our workers were laid off, people got hungry. And what we're now seeing is an increase in poaching. Because if people are hungry, they will go and shoot your elephants and shoot your game to feed their families. They will chop your trees. If COVID has taught us anything, it's taught us that for conservation to succeed, we cannot rely entirely on tourism, and we cannot entirely rely on donations. We've got to think of other rural enterprises for the community and meet the hunger and the poverty issue in the community if conservation is going to be successful. This is another chain that has suffered. This is a chain of computer training centers in the townships in South Africa, both Eastern Cape and Western Cape. We run about 42 outlets and have trained over 25,000 young people to become computer literate. This is a 6-month program. They pay. And at the end of 6 months, they get a Microsoft certificate. And because of COVID, the number of students have dropped for 2 reasons, I guess. One is because of the shutdown, lockdown, but secondly, because when people get laid off, they don't have the revenues and the income to be able to pay for these kinds of programs. But they're now picking up, just as our game park is picking up in South Africa. Bridge International Academies is a low-cost schools that we run. We run 5,500 schools with 1 million primary school children in our schools pre-COVID. But with COVID, we've had to shut down these schools, and we very quickly pivoted over to an online, because all our curriculum are digital, and we use tablets for all our curriculum to teach. So it was very easy to pivot over to an online. The problem there was that many of these poor children and families can't afford computers, so they have computers at home. They don't have smartphones. So only those who are funded by government schools that we have partnered with were able to access education during this COVID time. We're now seeing schools now reopening in all these countries, in Kenya and Uganda, Liberia and Nigeria. So we are hoping to get back to where we were pre-COVID. One final one that has also suffered is this business here that we have in Malaysia. And this is a plant called kanaf, which is a kind of hibiscus variety, grows really, really fast. We harvest it about 3 times a year. The fibers that you can see hanging on that line is really valuable. It's used for car interiors. So Toyota is the main purchaser of these fibers for making car interiors and insulation. But we use the core to mix with lime to build low-cost houses. So this is a kind of waste product from a plant, and these are the kinds of houses that we built. Again, with COVID, we can't run the factory, and also now with COVID, people don't have the funds to sort of build houses, and so we're looking to restart that. So a mixed picture overall. Some have done really, really well. Others have surprised us that we thought will do well, especially in the healthcare sector, and they haven't for a number of reasons. And then third area, the ones that have done the worst has been in education, in the hospitality and training area. So lots more to do. We run a number of the social impact funds where we are now helping a lot of these companies with bridge financing to tie them over for another year. We think that this pandemic is not going to go away anytime soon. I come from the pharmaceutical background, so I have a particular view about the sort of the disease and this pandemic. And I think we need to learn how to live with this. We need to help our businesses in these kinds of countries to cope so that they can survive and be around for at least another year when we think at least some normality might return. So thank you for your time this morning, this afternoon.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kim Tan. You can see that Dr. Kim Tan has been doing so much through his network of the transformational business network all over the world. You can see that he has been serving people in different continents, Africa, in Asia, in Singapore, in Malaysia, in different parts of Africa. And I think his social venture capital investment funding spread all over the world. And I think he has done so much to serve the poor. And I forgot to introduce that actually he's a co-author of 2 books. He's written 2 books on fighting poverty through enterprise and social impact investing, New Gender in Fighting Poverty. So you can see that his vision and his passion in serving the poor through his social capital ventures. And so I think we can ask him more questions later on, and I can see that he's been very frank, honest, sharing with us about the difficulties that he and his team has encountered during COVID-19 and how they try their very best to overcome these challenges despite the challenges that they are encountering. So thank you very much, Dr. Kim Tan. So we come to our next speaker, Jennifer. Ms. Jennifer Newson has until recently been the National Director of World Vision Lesotho. And I understand that from yesterday onwards, he's now the Global Response Director, responsible for COVID-19 of World Vision International. That is the International Director of World Vision. And I think you are aware that World Vision is a Christian humanitarian development and advocacy organization serving 2 million people in 90 countries all over the world. And Jennifer, during the last decade, he has been serving in different countries, serving the fragile states and humanitarian emergencies. I met her a few years ago. I think it was in Uganda, and she was in charge of the refugee camp there. And so she has been working in 12 countries and 3 continents during the last 10 years. And I think she has a lot to share with you. And without much ado, I would like to give the time to Jennifer to share with us about her work during the COVID-19 and other work that he has been involved in. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's, let's see, I can just get my presentation going up here. There we go. It's an absolute pleasure to be joining all of you. And I'm just going to set my timer to make sure I don't go over time. I'm really pleased to be able to be here and to share with you. I think that it's, I've been a humanitarian for my whole working career. And truthfully, I knew I wanted to do this from the time I was about 15 years old. It's something I've had a passion for a long time. And I think that for those of you who are listening, who are in that youth category, you are in this incredible historical moment where there are so many opportunities available for you. And from the opening remarks, we heard that out of crisis comes opportunity. And I think that's very true. So I'm hopeful that today is something that serves to inspire you and gives you some good ideas about ways that you can move forward and really make a difference in the world. So I have a few things I'd like to share. Just a little bit of background about myself. I have a degree in history from UCLA. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because I think that one of the great things about being at a point in your life where you're beginning your education or you're in the middle of your education is you have so many different things to study. And it's not necessarily a straight line between a degree in history from California and being a humanitarian working in Africa. But I promise you that, studying the social sciences or studying the arts or humanities really has a lot of applications in the real world. So for those of you who are in more hard sciences, that's wonderful. We need people in STEM. But I just want to say that there is always a path for those of you who are interested in other things. But after university, I got a master's degree from Tulane, the School of Public Health. And my specialty was in international health and development, and specifically complex emergencies and disaster management. So I knew that this is something that I wanted to do. And this picture is of me about 10 years ago in my first job in South Sudan. And I had this job in the middle of nowhere. And one of the things that I learned there was the importance of listening. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a bit, but just to say that, wherever you choose to serve, wherever you're finding yourself useful, I think one of the most important things you can do is to be humble and listen to the people that you're serving, because they are the ones who knows what their needs are. They are the ones who know what's most important in their context. And if you come as an outsider into someone else's community, it's extremely important to understand what's happening there and to collect data and make decisions based on other people's input. So World Vision, as the professor mentioned, is a global organization. We're one of the largest what's called NGOs, or non-governmental organizations, in the world. And we operate in over 90 countries. These are the countries where I've worked, so largely in Africa, although a little bit in Asia. You can see that a lot of these countries map to various disasters in the world. So I was in Nepal because of the earthquake, Philippines because of Typhoon Haiyan, etc. But it's been an extraordinary 10 years, and I've been very fortunate to have the career that I've had. So just to tell you a little bit about World Vision, we currently support 3.4 million children globally directly. But we have helped just in 2019, 20 million people, including 13 million children, in emergency responses. We're also the world's largest provider of clean water, non-governmental provider, of clean water anywhere in the world. And we do a lot of work with food security. So last year, we fed 8.6 million people, including 5 million children, in 29 countries. We're the largest partner of the World Food Program. The World Food Program just won the Nobel Peace Prize just this year, just a week ago it was announced. So that's something that we've done, and I'm quite proud of that. We have also done quite a lot with treating children who are suffering from malnutrition. 90% of the 136,000 children that we treated in 2019 were able to make a full recovery. We have a microfinance arm that that specifically focuses on, that has a large focus rather on female donors. We work with farmers, and we advocate for boys and girls and children. Of course, COVID-19 has changed the way that humanitarian assistance is delivered. First of all, the needs of children and their families are changing. World Vision has done a series of assessments. You can find these online if you just Google World Vision COVID-19. And these assessments look at the secondary impact of COVID-19 specifically on children. And this is something that I think we need to talk about and focus on more. The medical aspect of COVID-19 is devastating in and of itself. And it's very important that we as a global community address that. But truthfully, the aftershocks or the secondary effects, I think, are going to have much greater consequences on us as a human population and as a society as we move forward. So we've done some assessments internally. This looked at more than a dozen countries, and we found that households across the world have limited food stocks. Globally, we find that 110 million children are going hungry, and that we find that large numbers of children, we found 8 million, have been pushed into child labor and begging because of the economic consequences of COVID-19. This year, the World Bank has projected that about 20% of remittances globally are going to be cut off because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic consequences. To give you an idea of what that looks like, in 2008, 2009, remittances globally only went down 5%. So this is a major hit. A lot of the countries where they're fragile states, where we have lots of vulnerable people, really rely on those remittances for coming from abroad or even just from neighboring countries. And that's just one example of the economic consequences of COVID-19. If we look at people, economic migrants and refugees in South America, 80% of them, of Venezuelan migrants, reported a significant drop in income. 83% said that every third child is going to bed hungry. And we also have 69% of people reporting that they're currently earning less than half of their pre-COVID-19 income. And the consequence of that is that they're spending less on healthy food. We also see that there is a tremendous impact on child protection issues. Children are more vulnerable during this time. They're home from school. They're exposed to people in their communities they wouldn't normally be exposed to. Adults are frustrated. There's a lot going on. So we find that 85 million more girls and boys worldwide may be exposed to physical, sexual, or other emotional violence. We find that 13 million extra child marriages may occur. That's a lot, 13 million extra child marriages. When families around the world find themselves in an economic circumstance where they can't feed their daughters or they need the dowry by marrying their daughters off, that's a coping mechanism, a negative coping mechanism that they turn to. We also find that children are being pulled out of school, and when they're not in school, they're also at higher risk for child marriage. Just to look at one country, Bangladesh, we did an assessment there, and we saw that the beatings by parents or guardians had increased by 42%, and there was a 40% increase of calls to the child helpline. So COVID is more than just a medical problem. COVID-19 turns out to be a problem that affects all manners of society. And it has additional health consequences. We find that over 30 million children's lives are at risk from secondary health impacts. So just to give you an example, there's a 30% reduction in DTP3 immunizations globally because of the impact on health services due to COVID-19. And that's a big number. That's 26 million children who are at a greater risk of exposure to this potentially fatal infectious disease. We also find that we're having an increase of about 40% of child malnutrition, and that we find that about 50% more children may die of malaria in the coming year. So this is a picture of me. This was 2 years ago. I'm in a refugee settlement in northern Uganda. All of these children are from South Sudanese families. And I just wanted to put some faces on these statistics. These aren't just numbers, even though they're big numbers. These numbers represent human beings, every single one of them. And so I think it's very important as you consider the global consequences of COVID-19, economic, social, psychological, and medical, to recognize that the impact is really great, especially on people, on these little ones. The other thing that's changed for us is public health restrictions mean that we have to change the way we interact with communities. So this was me many years ago in Chad, and you can see we're in a small room, everyone's crowded together. I had an opportunity to, hold people's hands and speak to them and really just have a chance to bond with them. But of course, now what we see is that we see social distance, we see people wearing masks, we're not allowed to have people congregate as much. And that's really changed the way that we deliver assistance. World Vision, 99.9% of our staff are local. We are in a lot of very rural areas. We're often the only organization in a particular community. And we do that, we build relationships with people. And those one-to-one relationships are becoming increasingly difficult in this time, in this pandemic. It also means that, our staff are in those communities. They're part of those communities. So what those of us who are on the outside, those of us who come into a place to help and aren't from that place, we really have to be mindful of the impact that this is having on our staff, because they really are the frontline workers. And they're the ones that are most affected by this day to day, because we're asking them to do work and expose themselves and potentially bring home the virus to their families. The other issue is that there's an uncertain funding environment. Every organization right now who relies on donations or who relies on grants is really having to recalibrate their FY21 numbers. When it comes to private donations, I'm currently in California in the United States. A large portion of World Vision's individual donations come from Americans, and we can see that we have unprecedented levels of unemployment right now. That means that individuals are less likely to donate. Equally, if we look at bilateral donations from governments around the world, and even we can see that individual governments don't know what's happening in their own country, so they're wary of pushing money out for COVID response. And multilateralism is also somehow a threat in the world that we live in today. And there's additional funding crises that are happening where resources are being redirected to one place, then of course that necessarily means that they're taken out of somewhere else. So there's a lot of uncertainty around the funding environment right now. So then the question is, okay, how did World Vision face this challenge? We all of a sudden, we were a big organization. We're kind of, we're hard to maneuver. We're not particularly agile just because of our size. But all of a sudden we found ourselves in a position where we had all this experience. We had boots on the ground. We knew how to work with communities. We'd done health programming before. We'd done programming to address some of the issues. So how did we face this challenge with COVID? So we've managed to reach 54 million people, including 19,618,763 children globally, which is very exciting. We have 18 more months of our current response that we're hoping to be able to reach. We're hoping to have a $350 million dollar response. And I find this statistic to be very exciting. Every 60 seconds, we help more than 200 people survive, recover, and rebuild from the effects of COVID-19. And I want to encourage those of you who are sitting in the audience today, those of you who are at the beginning of your careers or are trying to figure out, what it is that you want to do moving forward. 12 years ago, I left graduate school and I had this idea that I wanted to be a humanitarian. I had this idea that I wanted to do something in the public health field. And I was very fortunate. I was presented with opportunities, but I also said yes when those opportunities arrived, and I put myself out there. And I think that, now I've just become the global response director for World Vision for this COVID-19 response. And I'm telling you that because I think that it's important to know that if you are part of an organization that has a social mission and you want to do something that has a strong social impact, you can still have an exciting and challenging career. You can still, learn a lot about business and about leading people, about finance. There's so many opportunities, and I want to encourage you that one is not sacrificing the other, that there are ways to, every single day I wake up and I'm excited for the job that I do. I'm really passionate about the work that we do. It's complicated. I lead big teams. I have lots of personalities in my teams. And so it's, just to say that as you're looking forward in your careers, don't think that working in social enterprise or working for a humanitarian organization or working for your church or doing something that you feel has a social benefit is going to necessarily involve a sacrifice on your own part. You can have both of those things. And I just want to, as I conclude, just talk about some of the lessons which we can learn. So organizationally, we really saw during this COVID period the importance of teamwork. The whole organization came together and focused on one thing, and we really were able to make a huge difference in terms of responding to COVID. We were also very agile. I think there was a recognition early on that our business was supporting vulnerable children. Our business was not having in-person trainings, or our business was not doing a food distribution a certain way. So we were able to be very agile about changing the modality of what we did to make sure we still met our goals, but just did it in a different way. We were also very responsive. Within a few weeks of this pandemic breaking out, World Vision had a plan and we were executing the plan. And I think that when it comes to any kind of social impact that you want to take, responsiveness is very important. Timeliness matters. A lot of the issues that we deal with are issues that are very time sensitive. And if you're there too late, you might as well not have shown up at all. We were also very data driven, and this is incredibly important. it's not enough to want to do good, right? You have to be professional about it. You have to have your facts straight. You have to know what you're doing. And you have to make decisions based on data. And lastly, we were focused. We knew what we wanted to accomplish. We had clear goals and objectives, and we set out to achieve those goals and objectives. And then on an individual level, I just want to say, some of the lessons that I've learned over the course of the last 10, 12 years, but specifically during the COVID pandemic, one thing is to say yes. That you will encounter all kinds of opportunities. And I think that there's, put yourself out there, be brave, be courageous, say yes to things, go places. There's so much of the world to see, and there's so much rewarding work. And even now, in a time when you can't travel, there will be opportunities put in front of you. And even if you don't think that that's exactly what you want, say yes to it and see what comes out of it. I also want to encourage everyone to just be humble. As I said at the beginning, when you work with any kind of a community that's not your own, and even if it is your own, there's a lot that you just don't understand. There's a lot of context you need. So I would just encourage, all of us, especially at the beginning of our careers, to try to be as humble and open as possible. I also want to encourage everyone to ask questions. My father has a saying. He says, you learn something new every day. And I'm a big question asker. Curiosity is probably the most important trait that I look for when I hire somebody. So, find out, get to the bottom of things, find out why things happen, ask the why questions and the what and the who and the hows. It's very important to be able to do that. And especially with COVID, I think there's so much information that's changing every single day. With timelines and responses and public health measures and consequences, et cetera. So you really want to make sure that you're a student forever. You're continuously learning, and that you're learning from all kinds of different sources. So that's it. I'm so pleased to been able to share that with you. I look forward to your questions and any additional interaction. Please feel free to go to the World Vision website and look at some of the work that we're doing if you're interested. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. I think Jennifer has shared with us not only a global, a scenario of what's happening during this COVID-19, but also I think she has shared with us her heart and her thoughts and her journey. And I think I really appreciate that you are sharing, your journey into this humanitarian work from your childhood, from your teenage years, and then how you search for your dreams, and then gradually, step by step, you are able to pursue your dream and able to actualize your dream through your work. And so I think for all the students that are listening, I'm sure what Jennifer has just shared with you resonate with you and with all of us, because if we have a dream, it's a little spark, and the spark can gradually become something that you can pursue in your life, the rest of your journey. And I think Jennifer's story told us that even though it's a small dream, but you can pursue it step by step, and you can influence a lot of people. And now she's in charge of COVID-19 project of World Vision, a huge organization dealing with helping with a lot of children and a lot of people all around the world. So it's a dream come true. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for sharing with us your life journey. And I hope that many of us will be inspired and find your own respective way to fulfill your dream. And our third speaker is Mr. Jeffrey Andrews, who's a social worker at the Christian Action of Hong Kong, which is serving refugees and a lot of marginalized people in Hong Kong. And Mr. Jeffrey Andrews is Hong Kong born, and he is one of the first ethnic minority registered social worker in Hong Kong, which is not easy to get. And then he has been serving refugees and minority groups for a long time. And actually in 2014, he traveled to the United Nations in Geneva to speak about the issues of segregated schools and putting a stop to it, And also he appeared in a lot of TV programs advocating for the rights of refugees and the marginalized. And in the year 2016, Hong Kong government has given him a commendation scheme and award for his outstanding contribution to the enhancement of racial harmony and integration in Hong Kong. So thank you very much, Jeffrey. So I give the time to you to share your story. Thank you.
Great. Hello, everybody, and 大家好，香港人，你哋好。So I'm just gonna give you guys a quick. Can you all see that? Awesome. Well, I'm working in this fantastic organization called Christian Action, and I'm in a separate unit called the Center for Refugees. This has really changed my life, just like how Jennifer has been such an inspiration just hearing your story. So every day I meet people who flee political persecution, religious persecution, race violence, people from the LGBT community who are fleeing persecution as well. So as an ethnic minority in Hong Kong going through, discrimination myself, it's an eye-opening experience when you see people fleeing from other countries and I would say go through much worse. I'm so lucky through my job in Christian Action as a social worker. I work in the most infamous building called Chungking Mansions, which I'll go into a little bit later on. Because I speak Cantonese, because I'm also a Hong Konger, also an ethnic minority, serving refugees, I've been able to use different platforms that I have to become a bridge. And so fortunate that through my role, I've been able to bring a lot of local Chinese community into the building to understand minorities, to understand also refugees. Now, if you told me 15 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even as much as 7 years ago, would a lot of local Chinese come into this building? No, because of sadly the stigma, the labeling, the stereotyping, and of course not helped by the media of the portrayal of this building. And then on top of that, refugees and minorities. It's all topics that are not very shown in popular light. And so I'm very grateful that I've been able to do that. Now, through my role there, a lot of local media have been able to come and see the other side of Chungking Mansions and the refugees and minorities. So much even last year, I was featured in the LA Times. So grateful for every opportunity that can enlighten people about what is the real struggle going on. 2019 was a fantastic year for minorities. Even though it was social unrest in Hong Kong, ethnic minorities somehow, through this very challenging time Hong Kong was facing, actually had something good that came about, and I'll go into it just a little bit. So this is Chungking Mansions, Chung Hing Dai Hao, we always say in Cantonese. Usually there's always this look of like, I don't want anything to do with it. I've never been there. And in fact, many local Hong Kongers, even elderlies in their 60s and 70s, says they've never been into this building. So what is this building about? Well, I would say it's the only place in Hong Kong that's truly diverse, because it's got people from different ethnicities, different restaurants, shops that sell cultural and religious attire, guest houses, and it's really a global melting pot. There's a very famous book by a professor called Gordon Matthews, who wrote a best-selling book called Ghetto in the Center of the World. And believe it or not, maybe the word ghetto is not really positively looked at, but it is a very beautiful, harmonious place, I would say. So what happened last year was, unfortunately, during the social unrest, one of the human rights activists was unfortunately beaten up. And in most cases, there's always a blame on ethnic minorities. And unfortunately, this time again, social media and the news said that it was a couple of ethnic minorities beat up this social activist, Jimmy Shum. And on same social media platforms, they said, you know what, it's time to attack the mosque, attack Chungking Mansion, and attack South Asian people. And this was a shock. This was a shock to me and many of our friends. And believe it or not, this time the community was actually in fear because we saw what was happening in the social movement. lots of different things and attacks and just chaos. So what did I do? Me and my friends decided this is not the Hong Kong, right? I work in an organization up in Chungking Mansions. I've been in this place trying the last 10, 11 years to build bridges, to bring people in. We do different kind of community tours. It's been a slow and steady process. But what happened is this time, through this crisis, we actually created an opportunity. So a couple of friends and I, we thought, this can't be the Hong Kong that we imagined to be. So let's do something very Hong Kong style. And that was, I released a status on my social media, and I said, you know what? We, from the ethnic minority community, were decided as a group of ambassadors of peace to be stationed outside Chungking Mansions to safeguard and provide water bottles and smiles to our famous ethnic minority hospitality. So, the theme of the social movement and this throughout last year was Be Water. And we really thought water has no color, and that symbolizes, minorities, symbolizes, you and I, everyone needs water. And fortunately, this status became viral, and a couple of celebrities shared that around Hong Kong. And the next day, when we were actually supposed to be outside Chungking, fearing attacks and threats, we didn't know from where. It was this amazing, beautiful connection that I've never seen in the history of Hong Kong. So a couple of friends, we got together, we bought all the water bottles that we could in Chungking Mansions, actually bought all the waters, we ran out. And we just stood outside and just said, you know what, let's see what happens. We believe in the goodness of Hong Kong and the goodness of Hong Kong people, just like we all are. And it was the most beautiful 4 hours I have ever seen. It was truly, people came and hugged us and connected, and they took our water bottles, even though they had their own waters. And it was just this fantastic. We just gave out these fantastic speeches, and we sang these local songs, and it was so well received. It was just hitting all the news worldwide and even locally, of course. And this is the scene outside Chungking Mansions, because believe it or not, if you ask me any other day prior to the social movement, would people just walk by Chungking? Not really, because there's a sense of like, it's unfamiliar territory. But that day, it was incredible. It was like, you just could not, there was no space, and nobody came and attacked us. It was beautiful. It was really, I would say, a watershed moment for minorities and race relations in Hong Kong. And unfortunately, a couple of hours after our water distribution, there was a famous case where the police, with their water cannon vehicles, sprayed blue water on the mosques. So that day, minorities were put on a very positive light of, look, what they went through is incredible. Through all these attacks and threats, they still came out and stood in unity and solidarity. So the next day on social media, someone put up on a very famous social media platform that they're going to 懲罰 重慶大校, 懲罰, which to a normal Cantonese speaker like myself, who's not very fluent, 罰 means punish. And I told my friends, oh my gosh, we just did something so good, yet they want to still punish us. And luckily, a few friends who are locals, they understand the new lingo. They said, you know what, instead, 罰 懲罰 means it's a way of thanksgiving. So they're going to come in and support local businesses. So we were like, wow, this is incredible. So 10 years I've been trying to do tours, and it's not been easy because it's not very much in demand. But thanks to this water distribution, we were all over the media, and so this was one of the posts that said they were going to punish us, or Thanksgiving to us. And through this mode, what we had done is we said, you know what, we already said welcome to Chungking Mansions. So what we're going to do is organize tours for you. And believe it or not, on the 25th of October, which is nearly the 1 year anniversary, over 1,500 people lined up to join our free tours to come and understand Chungking Mansions and really what the building is about. And, we've got some incredible reaction from the public, and a lot of them coming in for the first time. elderly. I've never seen this building filled with so many local Chinese. Many of the businessmen and all the residents inside were very like, what is going on here? This is incredible. And lots of positive feedback. So this is what we did. And unfortunately, of course, in February, the COVID hit. If not every week, we were doing 2 to 3 tours and really changing the mindset of this building to the people of this building, and also really just bridging the cultural gaps and creating cultural sensitivity like never before. Through this, I was also very lucky. I could also bring people up to also understand my community center where I work, the wonderful refugee center, the only one that's open 6 days a week. So very wonderful people coming in to understand not just Chongqing and ethnic minorities who are local, born and raised, many of us, but also to understand refugees, to come into Chongqing and see that. So we were doing really well until, of course, COVID hit. So this is our normal community center on a daily basis. It's like the United Nations, people from all over the world. In fact, during the football matches, we have 45 people squished in just watching the game. Anyone from our clients to the local public, we just invite them in to enjoy a game. But unfortunately, with COVID, about a month and a bit ago, a fire happened into our community center. So you're seeing the photos of our community center completely burned and ruined. And I just thought, oh no, what now? Like, we're already struggling with COVID, and yet now we have a fire and it's just engulfed our whole center. This is just some of the things that are there. So what we did was, on top of trying to recover from COVID, we're trying to see what we could fundraise for our center in a pandemic. And this is some of the trophies you can see are damaged. What we decided, we're a center that always just does well with different crises, and we still continued serving our clients. And what better that we did is we also included the local public to come in and volunteer. Instead of just staff doing our work, we asked the local public, would you be able to take some of our burden away or our work challenges and come in and serve? And believe it or not, we even have Cathay Pacific staff who are already going through their own crisis right now. And many of them volunteer their time to come in and volunteer by providing masks and toiletries and essential items. And it was really incredible because COVID, you had the restrictions on public gathering, and then you have Chongqing Mansions, which is, probably many people would think it's not a safe place to be when COVID is around. And then on top of that, our center is just burnt and we only have kind of one unit working, but we still went on and served our folks. But even better, we brought the community closer by getting the local public to come in and serve with us. And it was a truly remarkable thing. Many of our clients where you could see tearing up, they saw the center burnt, and yet there was this local Chinese folks coming in and serving them with smiles and just saying, work as usual. And incredibly, World Humanitarian Day, which was just a couple of months ago, also was our big fundraising event, but we couldn't do it because of all the restrictions in place. So what do we do? Just like I think what we're doing now is we tried Zoom. Now, technology-wise, our organization is not the most advanced. Actually, the laptop I'm using today was wonderfully sponsored and donated by one of the professors of the university after yesterday's trial run. Didn't go too well, but we said, let's go for it. Let's try and see if we can still do what we always do best is again getting a gathering of diverse people to come in and talk about World Humanitarian Day. And it was wonderful. Again, we were so well received. We had over, I think, around 60 or 50 people join in at different times and talk about World Humanitarian Day, what our organization meant for the community, what it meant for Hong Kong, what it meant for the refugees. And what was so beautiful throughout this time, just in a span of 1 month. Now, our organization, the Burnt Unit, we were fundraising for, we made, just as of yesterday, 2 days ago, we found out we had $2 million raised from the local public which is very incredible. 10 years ago, if you had told me, hey, let's fundraise for a center in Chungking Mansions, a refugee center, I reckon not much public support. But what we've done in the last 10, 11 years, and especially just before COVID and also during COVID, made the Hong Kong community realize this is an important aspect. Even in this pandemic, financially crunch time, we managed to raise $2 million, and we're now starting work on our burnt unit. And on top of that, what we're trying to do through this COVID is now something very unique. Our clients miss coming to us on a large scale because this was such a happening place. But what we're doing now is we have a new project and funding that we're going to go into about 100 homes of our refugees and do home visits where caseworkers, social workers, and even volunteers will go into these homes and just touch base, reconnect, give some updates, and hear how they're doing. Because like many of you said, this pandemic it's indefinite. But I think what we've learned through all these crises is, you know what, if you have a positive mindset and you never say no, the opportunities are limitless. And I'm grateful today because if you had come in about a month ago, and I was here when the center was burning, and I just thought to myself, I'm done. I'm really done with this. We just cannot keep having crisis after crisis. There's only this much you can take. But today I'm here sharing with you. We have $2 million in the bank. And in fact, it's allowed us now to make the center enhance the other units as well. And we're just waiting for things to calm down. But I think we have a whole list of tours booked already by the local public. And again, for those students that are here and for our local friends, please do come down and visit. Our tours are awesome. And the best thing about this place is curry. I always believe in food diplomacy, food exchange. That's always going to help in any crisis. And with that, I just want to say thank you and look forward to some of the questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you very much. I think Jeffrey has been sharing with us about his personal experience and how you can turn a crisis into opportunity. And I think he has been extremely creative. And I think it is only possible because he has this passion and he has a lot of experience serving the refugees in Hong Kong and the minorities in Hong Kong. And you can see that he looked at things in a very positive manner. Even though the refugee center is burned down, I think he has been trying his very best to work with people, work with his colleagues and refugees, and think of creative ways to solve this crisis and turn this into a very beautiful story. And thank you very much, Jeffrey. And I think your story has inspired young people so that they can do a lot of things despite all the crises that we are encountering in different countries and despite the seriousness of COVID-19. Okay, so thank you very much for the three speakers, and I think you have inspired us about how we can deal with crisis, and I think your stories has been extremely inspiring to every one of us. And I have some questions because we have to make the best use of our time. We have around 20 minutes left. So one question is for Dr. Tan, and that is the audience said, interesting presentation and great initiatives. Would like to hear more about how you would tackle problem of poverty and the provision of basic human needs in local communities. I think this is a large question, but probably you can share a little bit more about how you would tackle problem of poverty through your projects.
When you are in a humanitarian crisis, the only way to solve problems and meet needs are through humanitarian aid. So the likes of World Vision, Salvation Army, and others, they are the front line, and they have to go in and meet the immediate needs of the crisis. But if we look at it historically, countries in the end develop because of foreign direct investments in businesses that create jobs, that help people to be independent, and so that families can provide for education, for healthcare, and so on their own. And we've seen this particularly in the Southeast Asian tiger economies. Tiger economies, 45 years ago, the GDP of Ghana and Kenya was higher than the GDP of Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea. And yet today, after the equivalent of about 6 Marshall Plans into Africa through aid, Africa has really just stayed stuck, if not gone backwards in some countries. And so there is no alternative but to mobilize capital to persuade people to make these kinds of investments that can creatively create jobs in these communities. And we are very intentional. We look at social problems, we look at social needs, and we say, instead of doing a charity which we'll leave others to do, can we as business people put in real capital to build real sustainable businesses? If you look at a slum, like we have so many around Africa and Asia, you can put 100 charities and 100 NGOs in there, and over 5 years, you will see some improvements. But if you can put 100 businesses in there, and each business employs 100 to 200 people, then you'll see change. But it's how do you persuade business people who are only interested in money, who are only interested in profit? How do you persuade them to allocate capital and time and talent to build these kinds of businesses? And that's why this whole space of social enterprise, social impact investing it's so important as a way in which we can tackle poverty. So that's basically what we're doing. So the Transformational Business Network is a network of disillusioned philanthropists and repentant bankers, and we lead them on these journeys to visit the slums, to visit rural parts of the world. And we say, okay, you're that smart, build some businesses here that are really sustainable, right? And put in your real capital and be patient with your capital. So you're not just looking for a single bottom line return. You're looking for a social impact. We measure our social impact, and you're looking for an environmental impact as well. So it's intentional. That's what we gotta be.
Okay, just a little follow-up question before we ask the other two speakers. And because the work that you are doing is massive and require a lot of capital investment, etc. So how can the young people that they are listening to this seminar now, how can they be gradually involved in such a venture, and how can they start?
So when we have young people, and I'm a pro-chancellor of a British university here, and we get a lot of these young people and who come and they are inspired. And what we say to them really is, one, go and spend some time in the field. And so we have opportunities for internships. So we have a lot of students come through, particularly to the Safari Game Park. They love that. It's a 5-star hotel there, and all the elephants and the rhinos and the lions. We have a lot come through to our slum schools. They want to see how we can run these kinds of schools, charging $5 per child per month. That's all we charge. Okay, and use technology to reduce cost. So go and spend time. Go and spend time with World Vision and Christian Aid and other organizations out there and learn. We really need to learn. And then what I say to them is, go and get a job. Go and train somewhere else. Go and get some real life experience. Don't come, straight from as graduates. You're not that useful to us. But go and spend a few years working in a corporation or in a business. And then you become really useful to us. Then we can find slots for you in some of the businesses where you can then really help them. So that's what I would say to people.
So get equipped and get prepared. So maybe I can follow up a question for Jennifer. And I think, you thank you for sharing about your background. That is, you graduate from US universities. And then, you are very interested in humanitarian work, and so you joined World Vision. But I suppose there must be a lot of cultural gaps, because coming from a very different culture, how can you be able to work with people on the ground in so many different countries? Because just now you show us the map of the different countries that you have been to, and all of them have different culture, definitely, and different religion background, etc. So what are the tips that you give to our young people in, how do you get to cross the boundary of cultural gaps?
That's a very interesting question, and there's probably whole fields of study that are devoted to that. But I think a smile goes a long way. At the end of the day, human beings are the same everywhere else. Mothers love their children the same way in Somalia as they do in Afghanistan, as they do in Hong Kong and Mexico City and New York. Like, we have these commonalities. Every culture I've ever been in, everyone likes to gather around food. There's celebrations that happen in communities. Every kid plays similar games. So I think you have to find those opportunities to just connect with somebody on a human level, and smile, and just leave alone the language and the ultimate purpose why you're there. Like, how do you just engage with someone as another human? I think that's very important. And I think that what I was saying before is humility is part of that. Often, when we go into communities, you show up with your big fancy car, your big Land Cruiser, if you're in the field somewhere in Africa, for example, with your fancy degree, and all these great ideas that you've learned from textbooks and professors and universities and whatever else. And there is something that you can give, but I think that you have to realize that these people have been living in those situations their whole lives, and they have a lot to contribute too. So it's not just about what you're providing, it's also about what they're providing. So you're solving a problem together. So I think there's something about being humble enough to recognize that you don't have all the answers. And then I think that the third thing is really just to ask a lot of questions. Be curious, don't assume you have the answers, and there's always something new to learn. And so I would say, friendliness, it's a very simple thing. Humility and curiosity, those are probably the three most important things that you can do. And maybe the other thing is, get out of your comfort zone, right? I mean, if you're, I don't know, it's hot and it's dusty, and you eat things you wouldn't normally eat, and you sleep in uncomfortable places, and just get over it. Like, there's something really beautiful about challenging yourself that way. So I think that's really important too. So yeah, I would say those things, but it's all worth it. Like, living a life of service is so worthwhile. It's so interesting and challenging, and absolutely a satisfying way to go.
Just looking at your smiles, I can see how challenging and interesting it is to work with people of different culture and, come out of your comfort zone. So a question for Jeffrey, and I think our young people are very interested in, how to reach out to the ethnic minority groups in their respective cultures, because I think in different countries they have different ethnic minority groups. And what are the tips? And then for the Hong Kong students, they would like to ask you how can they help?
Awesome. Well, I think for me, what I've also learned is just like Jennifer. I think I've made myself to take that first step. I think in Hong Kong sometimes many Hong Kong, we're very shy to take that first step. We just kind of like be in our own little comfort zones, and we don't want to reach out. And I think that is something I've learned here. Even myself, 11 years ago, I thought Africa was made of just few countries. And, and it shook me. And sometimes I saw my clients get upset when I couldn't even differentiate that. And I humbled myself and I said, you know what? I need to know more before I serve. And today you ask me, I know all 200 and plus countries, their flags, and where they're from, where they are, little bits of this. And one of the things is about ethnic minorities, they're very open, they're very hospitable people, because in Hong Kong, we're very like, okay, we're focused on ourselves, work, go home and relax. But minorities, we have a lot of culture, a lot of traditions, and food is an emphasis. And I really think that if Hong Kong students can take that first step and say, oh, I want to try, I want to engage, I'm pretty sure there's no need for ice-breaking games. It's very easy. And I think in Hong Kong, we do need that. And I also challenge young people as well, not just to be on social media, but not just to click on that country or click on something, but to go and do it, reach out, especially now in COVID. We actually have more opportunities than before.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. And I'm sure a lot of our Hong Kong students will be visiting you, and I'm sure our friends all over the world, when they come to Hong Kong, they would like to go to Chung Ching Building together with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Actually, you might. I like to go, one time as well. Actually, I haven't been there for a long time. Thank you very much.
Welcome to have curry with me soon.
Yes. I would like to ask a question for all of you, and that is, in view of the COVID-19, it changed the whole landscape worldwide. The global landscape has changed, and it affects international exchange, international collaboration. And I think all the students that are participating in today's workshop, all of them should be very interested in international collaboration and in international service learning and leadership development, etc. And now, there's no chance for them to do so. And can you give them some advice on, what can they do in view of this change in the international global landscape? What young people can do in order to continue with their pursuit of this international collaboration, and how can they engage in international collaboration and humanitarian work in future, despite all these challenges? Is there anything that they can do, any tips you would like to give them, any suggestion for them? Any one of you? Okay, Dr. Tan?
Well, what we can offer the students here is just to link up with us at the Transformational Business Network. We are a large network in Asia and in Africa. We run cohorts of about 30, 40 businesses at any one time. We take them through 6 months of mentoring to get them to be investment ready. Students are welcome to sit in on those sessions and learn and participate as well. In some of the businesses that we have currently, I've got a couple of students from London University who are interested in what we're doing, wanting to learn how to become fund managers in this space. So we allow them to sit in on some of our board meetings, so that they understand and how we work and what we're looking for. And it's kind of, in a kind of best way to learn how to do this. I mean, it takes us about 5 years to train a fund manager in this sector, roughly. And so those who are interested particularly in this area. And then others who want to learn how to build these kinds of businesses. And so we try and make introductions for them as well. So there are ways without needing to travel and so on, not as effective as being on the ground, but with COVID, we just got to make do. And so that is an area that we can try and help some of the students, try and tailor their interest to both region and to the sector that they might be interested in. So I think that there are ways. And then, for the graduate students who are good, we got people helping us with giving us better websites. All our businesses are too busy running our businesses, so you're really creative and talented. come help us build some websites. So we've got people helping us build websites and so on.
So thank you very much, Dr. Tan, for offering your opportunities in your vast network of social venture capital investment. And, actually his businesses spread around the world. There's such a long list that I didn't venture to read them all through. But I'm sure you can find it out from the Transformational Business Network and get connected with Dr. Tan and his team. And I'm sure after today, probably we can do some follow-up as well and see if, the students connected through this workshop can, do something together. Okay, how about Jennifer?
Well, I think there's three things that you can do. The first thing is connect with organizations in Hong Kong or wherever you are that are engaging in international humanitarian work, if that's your interest. So, for example, and I just using this, World Vision has a Hong Kong office, and they are doing two important things. They're raising money, which the world runs on resources. We can't do food distributions unless we can pay our staff and have fuel for our vehicles, et cetera. And they're advocating with the government of Hong Kong or World Vision Canada's with the Canadian government or World Vision Germany, et cetera. They're advocating that these various governments push policies that are pro-humanitarian, that are benefiting vulnerable people all over the world. So I would say definitely find out which organizations do work that's interesting to you and that you're passionate about, and see how you can connect with whatever branch of that organization is in your home country. Secondly, I would say learn as much as you can. It's just the amount of information that's available is phenomenal, just fantastic, and maybe a little overwhelming too. But find multiple sources and figure out what a topic you're interested in. Read, watch videos, read books and articles, talk to people that are interested, that are in the field that you're interested in, and really just absorb as much information. Use this time when we can't travel to learn as much as you can, to do as much desk research as you can. And lastly, all of you have an incredible gift right now. I'm 36. I'm not that old, but when it comes to technology, I'm like a dinosaur. You guys have grown up with technology that I only really ever got used to as an adult, and your ease at using it, and also the way that it automatically lives in your world, is something that's very unique to your generation. And so I think you can help people like myself or Jeffrey or Dr. Kim Tan. You can help us to amplify our voices so that the causes that we care about are larger. You have that ability. You also, I think, know how to present information and data visually that's very different for us. And so I would really encourage you to leverage this gift of being so technologically adept. So, yeah.
And how about Jeffrey? Do you have anything to share with our young people?
Yeah, for me, I would say start locally, right? I think a lot of the global issues are also related to a lot of local stuff that we're going through, the inequality and a lot of the humanitarian issues around the world. So I think, start locally, understand what your comfort zone is, what your strengths are, and then venture out. But I think right now in this COVID, don't be stuck because, I can't leave Hong Kong to go out and change the world. Change Hong Kong. I think a lot of things in Hong Kong now are struggling, a lot of the marginalized groups. So, not just in Christian Action, not just refugees or ethnic minorities, there's a lot of local Hong Kong poor as well that need help. So start locally.
Thank you very much. And I think all the advice that you have given are very practical, and I think can stimulate our young people to really get reconnected. One question asked by one of the audience is, given the fact of ongoing pandemic, to what extent do you think the concept of reconnection is redefined? And so, how do we reconnect? Because in the theme of this conference, we are talking about during this crisis, how do we turn crisis to reconnection? So, how do you see the redefinition of reconnection, and how do we go around, tackle this problem?
This is a very philosophical question, and all three of us are very operational. So, it's, I think that personally, I think human beings we're just social animals. It's who we are. We need that connection. And so I think that we're finding connections in different ways. People are doing Zoom events with their friends, or they're having long phone conversations with people they've lost touch with ages ago. There was an article today in the local newspaper. There was this prediction that because everyone was stuck together, that divorce rates would go way up because of lockdowns. Well, actually, the opposite has happened. You find that inter-household relationships have actually grown much stronger. So I think that you have to look for you have to be optimistic, and you have to look for the positive things in every situation. So yes, it's true. We can't, I dearly miss going out to dinner with my friends. Like, I really miss being able to do that. But there's other ways in which I've found other kinds of connections. So I think it's just about everyone's going to find a different definition, but that's what connects us as human beings is that's what makes us all the same, is this need to connect with each other.
Do you have anything to share?
Yeah, I think
Dr.
for
Tan.
me, Professor Angeline, whilst COVID has obviously been having a very negative impact, we shouldn't lose sight that the problems really existed before COVID. Poverty existed before COVID. And one of the things that we should not forget is, too much emphasis can go towards COVID and we neglect all the other things. More people are gonna die for us in Africa from malaria still than from COVID. And so our challenge is not reconnecting. Our problem is actually how to stay connected despite COVID. How do we still connect with our HIV population so that they don't neglect coming for their tests and for their drugs? How do we maintain those connections despite the crisis? So in a sense, COVID has just accentuated all the problems that we had before. And it's just made delivering and meeting those needs more challenging. So for us in the business sector, it's really about how to maintain those connections. And whilst we produce test kits, low-cost tests for COVID testing, we also manufacture tests for dengue, for malaria, for HIV. And those are still the diseases that are going to kill most of our people. And hunger, well, according to the UN, we're going to see another 100 million more in hunger. But we already had several hundred million before COVID. So COVID has just accentuated these problems and issues that we have. And so for us, it's just how do we stay connected, not reconnecting, how do we stay connected with all these people and all these issues?
Thank you. Yes. And Jeffrey, do you have any answer?
I think I definitely agree with Dr. Tan there. I hope we continue to connect. It should not just be because of this crisis that we've woken up. I think we need more involvement, more concern, and I think the future direction of the world is so dependent on what we do today. And I think COVID has given us that opportunity now to do things differently and to wake up.
Yeah.
So I ask people just keep connecting and reflecting, and also definitely going out of that comfort zone.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think, the whole world, is facing not just the COVID. I think it's more severe is the problem of, divisions and anger, and then pointing finger at each other and accusing each other, creating a lot of issues and problems. And I think we really need more cohesion and solidarity. And I think it seems that this COVID has created a lot of issues, and which has exaggerated the differences among nations and people. But on the other hand, I think for young people and for older people, we need to think of ways to connect, to stay connected, and also think of ways to overcome these issues and try to connect people. And I think young people are the future generation, and they are the future hope of the world. And how can young people help to steer this sense of hope and steer this sense of connectedness and solidarity is very, very important. And I think precisely because of this reason, that's why we have this summit this year, despite the COVID. And we want to connect young people together so that we can work together to foster hope and foster solidarity among young people all over the world. And today we're really glad that we have young people from all over the world and different continents connected through this Global Youth Leaders Summit. And I would like to thank the three speakers for sharing your thoughts and sharing your heart and sharing your dreams with us. And I think your dreams and your passions have definitely ignited the fire in them. And despite the COVID, I hope that everybody will stay strong and stay inspired, stay happy, and try to do something for the world. And I think there are a lot of things that we can do for the world, to enhance solidarity, to enhance collaboration, and to do something for social betterment for the whole world. Thank you very much. So I will give back the time to our MC. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for all the speakers for your good contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yun, and our three honorable speakers for your fruitful sharing. And I'm sure all of us have gained valuable insights into the new global landscape amid the pandemic. Now, to bring a complete end to the open session, may I now invite Professor Kwok Yin Wong, Vice President in Education of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, to deliver the closing remarks. Professor Wong, please.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we end today's open session, I would like to thank you all for joining us. In particular, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the panelists and speakers for sharing their ideas on a new global landscape and how they put their beliefs into their everyday practices. In the midst of the global pandemic, the Global Youth Leaders Summit has showcased a good example to demonstrate that during times of crisis, we can still share ideas, innovations, and visions, especially with the help of technology. Here at PolyU, we have been working hard to overcome the challenges of teaching while being socially distant, but yet without compromising the quality of learning and teaching. Many subjects, including surface learning subjects, have been forced to go online. Our teachers scramble to make new arrangements at short notice. Our community partners work with us to experiment with new ways of providing service to the needy. We go to this effort because PolyU knows that to nurture future leaders, we have to ensure they never quit learning and never stop serving. Turning the summit into an online experience might seem a compromise, but on the contrary, we believe that it is an opportunity to explore a fresh way to learn and communicate with different parts of the world. We firmly believe that our young people will be taking charge of this changing force, not only to rebuild, but also reimagine our world. Following the open session, we are now going to have the Global Reconnection Hackathon and the Global Reflection Workshop. Some young leaders will prototype innovative services and products to reconnect the community in the Global Reconnection Hackathon, and others will reflect upon different challenges around the globe. Globalization will need to be redefined in the face of the epidemic. Our young leaders are the generation that will be most impacted by this change. During the open session, I was struck with a sense of optimism about our world's future progress. Indeed, there is so much to be done, but we have much new and vital force in our young leaders. We now close the open session of this year's summit. To the young leaders who are staying on for the closed session, you can expect more fun and fellowship with others in the Global Reconnection Hackathon and the Global Reflection Workshop. Do enjoy your time and have rewarding sessions. Learn more, contribute much, and above all, keep an open mind and an open heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wang, and this marks the end of the open session. We hope all of you have enjoyed the session today and can reflect on what you have learned in relation to your own experiences during this pandemic. Coming up is a closed session exclusively for nominated students of our partnering universities. For other participants, thank you very much again for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you in our future occasions. Today's presentations will be uploaded to our website shortly. And finally, before you go, please help us to complete a questionnaire on the top right-hand corner of your screen. Thank you very much and goodbye.